All right, I'm smoking Fatal Attraction from King of the Leaf, which is a new subscription cigar service I joined. I have no idea if my audio is okay. I see there's one person there. Let me know if the audio is okay. This is a King of the Leaf cigar, which is a cigar club that's from cigardagger.com that I joined, and the cigar is called the Fatal Attraction. Let's give it a whirl. Give it a little sniff. Hey now. All right, we are off. Sounds great, thank you. So today I figured I would come out here. I just shot a video for my cigar channel opening up a Cigar of the Month box and went over the cigars. This was one of them. This is the King of the Leaf Fatal Attraction. And I'll be putting that video up probably tomorrow at some point on my cigar channel. But I figured it was so warm while I came out here, and tomorrow's going to drop down 25 degrees, where at that point I smoke cigars in my garage. I got a little heater over there, a little TV where I could watch YouTube, or it's a little Roku on the TV, so I can watch, like I watched South Park yesterday, they're smoking a cigar, Paramount Plus, and everything else. I watch Columbo's back there, it's great. But because it's such a beautiful day, I figured I would come out here. I got a gig tonight. I had a gig on Thursday, and for those curious, Jerry sat in on the gig on Thursday night. Last night was my student Rich. It was his gig that I went to. But Thursday night, yeah, Jerry came down. He was laughing. He actually was like, I said, "Oh, you're still alive?" He goes, "Oh yeah, that's right. I fell asleep during your show. Did anyone care?" I'm like, "No." And he goes, "That's cool." He didn't care. Jerry's too cool for that. He was just like, whatever. And hey, Music Therapy Labs, what's happening? So, so Jerry came up. We did, what did we do with Jerry? Jerry did it, Just My Imagination, the Stones version. He did some other song that I didn't know, but I didn't play on. And then I played on one more song. I don't remember what it was. So I did this gig on bass, and we really didn't have a lot of stuff to get down tight, which we got a whole set out of, and then people wanted to come up. There was so many people invited that the singer invited, because he can't remember songs and whatnot. And, I had a little trouble with it, so he was fine. But so we ended up bringing up all these different people. Jerry came up and played, and then Jay, my old bass player from my other band, came up and played. And it was a fun night, easy night. Okay, this is good. This cigar is a flavor that I haven't smoked. I've been smoking the same 2 or 3 cigars for the last couple of days. And boy, this one's different. Really out there compared to the other 2. This is up my friend Chuck's alley. This is a flavor bomb right here. Hey, Charlie F. Yeah, it was a fun time. I'll say it was fun. We had a good time. There was lots of laughs, and then there was some people from other bands that I played with before that I did fill-in gigs for showed up, and it was cool hanging out with them. There's people that run an open jam in Rockland on Sundays. I think I talked about going there. They came out to see us and hang out. It was a lot of fun. A lot of people swung by. I felt the singer, the guy whose gig it was, his band hadn't played in a while, and he was coming out of retirement, but he had a lot of like heavy shit going on in his life. So he wasn't in the best of like, it was good to have friends around him. And so then his bass player couldn't do the gig, and that's when he reached out to, well, he reached out to a bass player buddy that we both know, and he couldn't do it, and so he reached out to me, and I said, I'll play bass. So we did it, and it was really cool because people came out to support him, and he felt really good about it. Like he was really happy. It was good to see that. That was what was cool about it, and the fact that it was a fun gig and we all had some laughs. I mean, that's we weren't taking it too seriously. The keyboard player Jack at one point was getting mad, and I looked over at him and started laughing, and he just started laughing. And he's like, "It's ridiculous, right?" And I said, "Well, this whole thing is. I mean, it was just." But what happened was he wanted he called out a song to do, and some reason some girl came up and just started singing, and the mic over him, and he's like, "What the hell is?" It was just hilarious. Needless to say, I don't think Jack saw the humor in it that I saw, but I was laughing anyway. I didn't care. It was funny. And we all had a good time. I mean, like I said, it was throughout the drama of the evening, it was still very fun. And then last night I went and saw Rich play, and they were great. They were great. There's some things that I don't like that his band, the way they do some of the Allman Brothers stuff, and I voiced my opinion about it clearly. I'm not one to hold back. And Rich agreed with me. I saw him on, they did an intermission, and on the intermission I talked to him about it. We had a few laughs about some stuff, and then I was like, you're struggling tonight with the sound because the sound guy here is one of the worst sound guys I've ever heard. Everything was coming through it sounded like the kick drum and the bass was so loud through the subs that the rest of the stuff you couldn't barely hear. But then there was just some technique stuff on one of the play. I don't want to out him here, but there was some technique stuff going on where I was like, they weren't playing to the subtleties of the song. They were kind of hitting it like a, like a blacksmith would just banging on. No, he wasn't a drummer either. So I was like, made those comments, but they were good. They were very entertaining. I stayed for the first half. I stayed for the first hour and a half. I think they played another hour after I left, but I didn't stick around. Back in Black. Oh yeah, there's a lot of AC/DC tribute bands. Yeah. Some tribute bands get it right, some do not. The ones that do not seem to be, most people can't tell the difference, but AC/DC, there's a lot of really cool interplay between Malcolm and Angus, and I don't think a lot of people get it, especially when I go see bands play it, and it's like they're playing the same things, and I'm like, well, no, Malcolm plays something different there, and I don't know. I don't think people pay much attention to detail that I do. Oh, really? It is, by the way, October 28th, and I have 3 more days left in the month of October where I'm not eating dairy. And I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to going back to eating dairy. I just miss it. I miss the sour cream on the bacon, cheese on my burgers, but I am down to 175, so that's pretty cool. A big egg reunion is in the talks. We're talking about it now. I talked to the singer, like it's been maybe once every other week, and I talked to the manager, our old manager, who's trying to put it back together. We're just waiting on a couple of little things to fall in place before we decide. What we'd like to do is go in and record the record that we wanted to record. So we got to go back and revisit a bunch of songs. But yeah, it would be really cool. Some of the songs I might have to I mean, I have to go back and some of the stuff I remember like it was yesterday, and then some of the songs, like when I see the song titles, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that, kinda. But yeah, we're talking about it. Yeah, it would be fun for sure. I'm also thinking about putting together like a small group here. And when I say a small group, I mean like a group of maybe 7 or 8 musicians with like a piano player, an acoustic guitar, pedal steel, um, percussion, but something that would be very rhythmic, very where I could pull off doing some Blue Nile songs and some Rain Tree Crow songs, which was the band Japan when they did their comeback without the guitar player, without the lead guitar player. I think David Sylvian played guitar on Rain Tree Crow, or even some of the David Sylvian stuff. Like I really love that atmospheric stuff. I want to buy one of the PRS on sale right now. Which would it be? I'm thinking double cut, maybe this. So I'm not a big PRS fan. I used to be when I managed West LA Music, we were a PRS dealer. And you know, I've seen many 10 tops go through them. I've seen the SEs, all the American made stuff. The one that I always liked was there's an SE with a maple neck. Not an SE, oh, what do they call that guitar? Custom 22. It's basically like the Johnny Highlander model at one point. I liked that guitar. Would I go out and play it or buy it? I don't really care for the scale length. I'm so used to Fender scale length. I don't even really like Gibson scale length. I'm so used to 25 and a half. And a lot of times when I play from muscle memory, if I'm like playing up the neck, those frets get a lot closer together on a Gibson and closer together on its PRS than a Fender. And so I'm used to that Fender scale length. So I don't really like to stray from it too much. And to give you an idea of what I mean, if you looked at like a professional violinist, they're basically playing a violin, but they're not going to go then play a 3/4 violin. Everything's the same scale because there's so much involved in, yeah, no, that was a leaf, with muscle memory. And, yeah. Anyways, I had an interesting lesson today. I had a student today, and we went over a song by Bill Evans called The Peacocks. And after we played it, we went through it, I was like, it didn't even dawn on me. I was just showing him how I prefer the sensibility, the blues sensibility of piano players like Bill Evans more than I relate to guitar players. Like people will say to me like Jeff Beck, and I'm like, yeah, I like them. I like Jeff Beck's rock stuff more than I like his blues playing, or any of the blues guys. They don't really do it for me. John Coltrane, like when he plays the blues, like Blues Train and that stuff, I love it. Like that I love. And it's because they're not playing what I would consider the cliche guitar lines. It's somewhat awkward on the guitar to play what they're playing, but melodically it's really nice. Even though it's basic. It doesn't have to be complicated. Well, taking that concept one place further, I showed him a song by Bill Evans called The Peacocks. Now I know he's done it once with Stan Getz, but this is the version he did on You Must Believe in Spring from I think it came out in 81, but I believe it was recorded in 78. It's one of my favorite Bill Evans records, but The Peacocks is like a great thing to learn the accompaniment and the leads, especially for a guitar player, because you're in the key, it's a C minor blues, but your melody it starts on a G and then goes to a D to an F. So it's like ba ba da ba ba da da ba da ba da, and then instead of playing the E flat to D, he plays it in the chords of a G sharp minor 7 to a G minor 7. It's just really an interesting look at how to approach a blues in this song. like I said, it's called The Peacocks. The album is You Must Believe in Spring, and it's one of my favorite records of all time. And so, as far as like, I mean, for guitar players, there's not many guitar players that you know, besides I think Jan just said he loved the record, that know the record. And yet you're pulling out musical vocabulary and music, because I always say this about like when we talk about music theory, people think I'm so up on music theory. And I don't think of it like that because I think of it like it's just a method of communication. You know what I mean? And people, when you start saying modes and you start talking all that nonsense, you're muddying up the communication. You aren't making it easier on people, you're making it harder. Like, that's not easy. But if you sit there and you say to somebody, well, like just take You Must Believe in Spring. In the Peacocks, he's really around, there's like a D minor, kind of a G7 feel going on over that C minor. But it's just a really cool way to hear how this jazz pianist communicates the blues. I mean, his piano sounds like it's crying in that song. It's so beautiful. And it's a great way to understand how to incorporate that over to the guitar. To me, is more interesting and more beneficial to you than learning, say, Jeff Beck's "Because We've Ended as Lovers," which I think is a great song. It's a Stevie Wonder song. Basically, he's just playing the vocal line of Sarita. Yeah, and I'm in your camp there. I'm a huge Bill Evans fan. More than anything with Bill Evans is I love his harmony. The chords he chooses, and when he plays certain chords, the notes he chooses to leave out, the notes he chooses to put in, those are, people always say, and you hear it all the time, it's not the notes you play, it's the notes you don't play. So it's one of those things where getting attacked by leaves. It's to hear the way Bill Evans approaches those blues songs, I think musically would help a lot of guitar players in understanding music so much more than sitting there going, oh, I'm going to play C minor in the Dorian mode. Oh, really? That's so interesting. The other thing is, I watched a jazz guy, talking about his like theory on music, and I had to watch it because I talk a lot about with my students. If you ever are an advanced type of player with me, I always talk about triads and using triads in your solos. And so this guy had this thing about using two triads over a line. And I was like, oh, this is the same shit that I've already been doing. But just to see somebody else approach it and the way that he approached it, I was really enjoying his video. But it's like taking, and then you see it right there in the Peacocks, where you take a C minor and you can be playing a D minor and a C minor triad over it. You can be using those two triads. So you could take the C minor and put E flat major and F major arpeggios, or an F arpeggio and a G arpeggio, or an F minor arpeggio and a G arpeggio. So it's a very cool thing, and it's really all about like learning. So that's what I do when I'm watching YouTube music stuff, is I'm watching other instruments and other people talk about different theories of approaching music, because I find that far more interesting than, is this better than a Fender? Is this Strat better than a Fender Strat? Who cares? Gives a fuck. I don't care. You know what I mean? It's like, I could show you 9 Strats that are better than a Strat, and I could show you another Strat that blows out those 9 Strats. It's really what speaks to you. You walk into a music store, and you pick up a G and L, and maybe it does nothing for you, or maybe it rings your bell. And if it rings your bell, and you go and you buy it, and you take it home, and you're playing the shit out of it, and you love that guitar, then you're going to go watch a video where a guy says, oh, is this G&L better than a Fender? And then at the end he goes, no, I think the Fender's a better guitar. Well, who cares what you think? It's a personal thing, and it's not even a personal thing to a fucking brand. It's personal to each individual instrument. I taught myself music. I taught myself music, so that's how I learned it. And, like, even from the time, you know, but that's my thing about, like, when I watch YouTube videos and it's like, oh, this amplifier, you want to sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan? Like, if you want to waste your time sounding like Stevie Ray Vaughan, that's your thing. Just listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan nonstop and copy his chops. Practice the shit out of them and copy them. That's if you want to sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan. But you think a piece of gear is going to make you sound like him, then you're as dumb as the people that are watching that video. Here we go. All right, this is a dark tasting cigar. Very dark on the retro. But anyways, so that's my point about that. You're much better off seeking out those things in music and doing it on your own. Do a deep dive on your own. Like, try to figure this shit out. People sit there and they worry so much about, like, oh, that's Dorian mode, and it's silly. It's silly. If you're playing a D minor and you're playing in the Dorian mode, that means there's a natural B, right? The sixth, they would say it's a raised sixth. I don't think of it like that. I think of the scale as just a minor scale with a flat 7. That tells me the numbers are 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. So that's how I look at it, and I look at it that way because it makes more sense to me that way. But also, if somebody said to me, we're playing D minor with a natural 6, I don't have to even think about anything. Or you could just say to me, we're playing in the key of C, and we're rooting on D minor. Okay, it's easy. I don't have to think about my triads because I know all 7 of them. I don't have to sit there and think. But when you talk about somebody that's really where modes are important, and you say to them, well, what are the triads there? They're going to start doing this. They start looking up and thinking about it. Well, God, imagine if you had a conversation with somebody and every time they talked, they would stop and go, yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. Oh, you sure? You got to think about it? So I just can't stand that. I just think that it's not helping anybody as a player. You know what I mean? If you understand the notes, the scale is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that if we flat the third, we have a minor, then we realize that if you just flat the third and everything else is natural, melodic minor. Flat the 6, harmonic minor. If you flat the 7, the 2 minor. If you flat both 6 and 7, the natural minor. I don't know. It doesn't get easier than that for me, anyways. Yeah, finger placement, I'm very big into a fret, a string, and then if I have to do spreads, like there's a difference between like a 1, 2, 5 or a 1, 3, 5. I'm basically 1, 2, 5s usually. But yeah, I mean, I use my pinky a lot. I notice a lot of people don't. I mean, whatever your fingers are strong at. But there's, finger placement, string placement, where you're playing the notes. I mean, everything is certainly comfortable to other people. I've watched, in fact, I played the guitar on something the other night. The guy came in that played bass. He played the bass on it. I played the guitar. And I played the solo. Now, I played the solo for something in the 7th fret position. For me, it feels right to me. I feel like I have more articulation of those notes and those bends. And I know that I've seen everybody in my life ever do this song. They play it on the 12th fret on the 4th and 3rd string, where I do it on the 3rd and 2nd. The thing about that to me is it has a sloppier sound, I want to say. It doesn't sound as good to me, and I have no idea where he played it on the record. I don't do deep dives like that into that, and I haven't seen Harrison play it live, so I wouldn't know. I'm sure I could look it up, but I don't care, because to me it's like what it sounds like, and to me it sounds so much better in the 7, 7, 9, 8. You know, like to me, it just makes more sense there. It feels better, and just where the slides go and everything just feels like the record to me. And but I could be playing it completely wrong to the way that George Harrison played it on the record. I don't know or care. I don't give two shits how he played it on the record, because it's really about how am I playing it and how I feel and how I see the fingerboard and how it makes more sense to me. Um, oh, here comes some Amazon stuff for me. Hold on one second, I got an Amazon package. No, not yet. Good cigar. It's a good cigar. You got two for me? Yep. All right, one second. And like that, I'm back. Leaves are falling all around. Yo, Cold Roses, what's up? So anyway, so that's my thing about finger position. Also, when I was like a kid, and we've talked about it on the show, what do you need?
You're not, if I'm not in the area, it's going to say delivery outside the area.
Oh, gotcha.
You're good, you're good.
Gotcha, no worries. Anyways, when I was a kid, we used to we had this magazine called Guitar for the Practicing Musician, and I believe the publisher was Cherry Lane. Could be wrong. I don't think I'm wrong. Anyways, what brand those two colored shirts you wear? Stephen Frazier, what brand are those two colored shirts you wear? You mean the ones that have the colored, the baseball jerseys? So there's a couple of them. If they're not, sometimes, well, there's two different brands. One of them's George, which is a Walmart brand. I just love those shirts, the George shirts. And the other, I'll get back to you. The other one is the red one with the blue, the red with the blue sleeves, and the blue with the really light, the dark black, or the blue with the teal sleeves. That's a different brand. And I also have a tank top by them, but let me just try to think of what the name is. I'd have to look into my phone if you want to. If you, Steve Frazier, if you're serious, like you want to know, email me on Dave44Levine at Outlook, and I'll email you the response. I'd have to look. I'm forgetting. I have to look on my phone, and my phone right now is filming me. But George is the other one. It's a Walmart brand. But anyways, what I was saying was in the Cherry Lane magazine in Guitar Player, now I can't remember who was writing out the transcriptions, but they would be writing it out in tab, which is number one, why I do not like tab, because in those days I'd be looking at the tab, and you look at it and you don't see visually what the hell is going on because you're playing how somebody wrote out all these like weird positioning for the solos. And I remember when I saw the Yngwie one, I was like, how the hell is Yngwie playing it this fast in this position? Didn't make any sense to me. Then if you watch Yngwie play, you're like, oh, he's 3 notes a string and everything. Well, this tab didn't teach you that. And then also in the tab, you'll see funky positions for stuff, and it's like, as my ear got better, because that was like around, let me see, that magazine was like 83. So I want to say like by 85, I had a pretty strong ear. And by 85, 86, like that was like right around the time I was senior in high school, junior in high school, I could listen to a song and play it back. And what I realized right about then was some of these tabs are like crazy, because I can hear the position they're playing in, I can hear where the chord struck, and then when you go look at it on the tab, it's like, yeah, this is if somebody had downs and they wrote it out. You live in Kingman, Arizona. I've been to Kingman. So they have a Walmart. So the other one is online. It's not a store. It's only, it could have been Amazon. Awesome. It could have been Amazon. In fact, it is Amazon. Oh, I know what it's called. It's called like it's not verbatim, but it's like Veritim. Look that up, Steve. Veratim or TEM, Veritim. It's not verbatim, but it's without the B. Veritim, something like that. Look that up. Go Veritim shirts, Google it, and see what it comes up with. If they have the baseball shirts, or if that's the brand, let me know. Alexa, what's the notification?
One new notification from Amazon Shopping. 2 shipments have arrived.
She had to make the notification sound to let me know 2 shipments have arrived. Yeah, I saw them. Boo-doo-doo-doo. Boo-doo-boo-boo-boo-doo. Again, folks, I am smoking, just in case you're curious. This is called, it's from the King of the Leaf, which is out in Los Angeles. I can't make out what that says. This says Fatal Attraction. What the hell does this say? Lacatrium? I have no idea. But yeah. Yeah, I always like those kind of baseball shirts. I also like the way they fit. I figured I have to sit outside today because this is going to be this is the last day of this heat. Veritas. Was that Steve? Oh, hey, thanks. Thanks, Alex. Alex 2112, clearly the Rush fan in the group. Gunk, 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 gunk. Gunk, 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 gunk. Gang it a 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 gang. There's a Vitamins. That could be it, Vitamin. Just type in baseball jersey and then that name. what did I say? Veratum? I can't remember. Anyways, I should show you my setup. I got like one of these chairs in the back next to my old monitor for my computer that has speakers hooked up to it, and my Roku. Shit's gold. Although Roku sucks. I like Apple TV. That's what I use in my room. In the bedroom. If you're in the Boston area, I'll be in Plymouth tonight from 9 to midnight at Martini's. That's always a fun gig. Guys, is it me or in this light does my tan look savage? I look so dark, don't I? That immense. Yeah, that doesn't sound right. Do you float the Strat Trem? I do not. That bothers. In fact, I don't know if the Strat Trem was meant to be floated. I know now they're the commie historians. They set them up to float. But I can't imagine that's how Leo had it set up back in the day. Because he was a real big fan of country. He had a lot of country guys that were coming to him. And you really can't do any of those crazy bends with a floating bridge. So mine's always really hard down. And when I set my Strat up, I bend the A string as much as I can bend it and make sure that it doesn't move. And if I can bend the A string to wherever I want, then I know every other string is good. But I don't float it because I do a lot of bending of, strings. And when I do those bends, there are times when I want a sympathetic string to be ringing, for another tone. And it'll go flat if you're, honestly, fucking leaves are everywhere. There's another one. But yeah, you don't want to bend that sympathetic string, you know what I mean? You want it, at least for me. Now, some people, they're into the Van Halen thing, they want to wank on the bar all day long. Go have at it. Float it, do whatever you want. I had a friend of mine, well, I still have her, she's been on the show. You guys remember Erin Ann when she came on the show, the blonde singer? And Erin Ann, would go out and see guitar players, and she'd be like, this person can't play in tune. And I'm telling you guys, these are players your jaw would drop when you hear the level of players that she did not like. And then, other, like Van Halen, she loved. She's like, this guy, his tuning is really good. Yngwie, she loved his tuning, but she would comment on guys with floating bridges who were always out of tune. And, it's funny, the classical trained people can hear that more than anybody. Especially people that, like, you're around violinists and they don't have frets. Cellos don't have frets. The double bass doesn't have frets. The viola doesn't have frets. So the pitch and vibrato is got to be dead nuts on. And that's a whole other thing that people need to practice. Like, I can tell somebody, if I would do a gig with them, just by listening to them do bends. I could see how far along they are in their playing just by hearing them bend. Because that really exposes the player. Really exposes the weakness of a player is the bends. Because Takes more of a disciplined player and somebody that's really got an ear that bends in tune all the time. And that's important. And so to me, I hear that a lot. Like, I see a guy play and I'm just like, Christ, bend in tune, will you? Land on a note. There's a guy who plays around here, and I always comment to a friend of his, I'm like, man, I'm willing to give him free lessons if I don't have to hear him bend that out of tune again. It's just, that's something that really separates the men from the boys. Yeah. Yeah, it's very, you can tell, like there are guys who like all they play is blues, all they play is pentatonic, and they're bending those notes and nothing's really coming in tune. I will say I'd rather hear somebody bend flat than bend sharp, but I'd rather not hear either. But flat is easier on the ears than sharp. But like I said, there's so much about music that's like interesting, and about guitar playing that's interesting. And what I find, and what is not interesting, is the minuscule, overly detail about the gear that the internet seems to really get involved in. People sit there, and I'll bring up Stevie Ray again. People talk about Stevie Ray's tone. And they talk about, certain shows. And they don't even realize, like, if he was in Japan, he's probably playing backline. He's probably playing backline gear. And a lot of these players, when you see them playing in smaller shows in foreign countries, they're more than likely playing backline gear, because it's not worth it to go on tour and schlep your own gear around that you would play. I mean, unless you're playing stadium shows, where you have trucks going all around, you're pretty much playing backline gear. And when I played in London and in Kent, I used backline gear. They called me up. They were like, "What do you want to play?" And the kind of music it was they wanted like my sound, which was, I had a dual rectifier. I said, if you could find a dual rectifier. They had a version 1 for backline. I play a version 2. I like the version 2s better. But the sound was fine. I mean, to me, it wouldn't even matter if it was a Marshall. I didn't care. But you're playing backline gear, and I can guarantee you, I don't have anything filming of the shows, but I can tell you that it sounded like me playing every time. And it doesn't matter what gear I'm using. There are guys who do videos where it's like, this is the cheapest guitar on Amazon. Is it worth it? This is the most expensive guitar on Amazon. Here's an expensive guitar put against a cheap guitar. Guys, who cares? What are we doing? Like, are we in the business to buy and sell guitars? And is that even a business is that even a profitable business? Who cares? Find an instrument you want to play, pick it up and play it. Now hold on a second. Let me just respond to this message. Sorry. I keep getting texted. I'm like, come on. So, yeah, but anyways, you're always going to sound like yourself. It doesn't matter. I mean, I think like, when there's those guitars, those EART guitars, from what I hear about them, pretty great guitars for $300. If you want a guitar that you're going to throw in your trunk and just always have a cheap guitar you can always grab that's going to be good, that seems like it's a decent thing. But there's a purpose for that. If it's going to be because it's going to be your main guitar in your room, and that's all you can afford, then okay. But if you got like 10 guitars and you're buying it just so you could have another guitar and you like the way it looks and all that, I think it's a silly venture to just not play. Like, focus on playing. It's all right. So, I mean, I would just focus on playing and, you know, if there's a sound that you want because you like that sound. For instance, let's say you're like me. You're not a huge Stevie Ray Vaughan fan. You respect him as a player. He's fantastic. I just don't care for blues. But you love his tone on on Lenny. You love his tone on Lenny. Well, what are we looking at there? And then you look and you say, okay, he plays a Fender Vibroverb 64, which is the AB763 circuit. I know it's been modified by Cesar Diaz to have the solid state rectifier, and since Cesar Diaz modded his amp, I'm sure he put the tremolo mod on there, which takes it out of the circuit when you turn it off. And once you know that, then you can sit there and you can go buy a vintage sound amp, Vintage 40. It's the same amp. Except Rick Hayes at Vintage Sound Amps will sell it to you with a 12-inch speaker instead of a 15 if you want a 12 instead of a 15. If you want the 15, you can get that too. So that's like trying to find something that you're looking for yourself. But will you sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan playing that amp? No, you're going to sound like you playing that amp. That'll sound like you. Now, I know Leif Alsati, he also plays the Vibroverbs. I think he has 264 Vibroverbs. And he might have a super reverb, which, if you guys don't know, a super reverb and a Vibroverb are basically the same amp. The super reverb, which Stevie Ray also had, the super reverb is going to have 4 10-inch speakers as opposed to 115. But Leif Alsati also has that. His tone is nothing like Stevie Ray Vaughan's, but he has a fucking great tone. But he sounds nothing like Stevie Ray, in my opinion. But he has a great tone. So in that respect, those amps are interesting to look at. The super reverb, the Vibroverb, because of what they are. Now, the Vibroverb's a heavy amp because basically it's the same amp as the Twin. But the Twin has a bigger bigger transformers, and it takes in 2 more tubes, 2 more power tubes. It's 85 watts as opposed to the 40 watts. And again, if you're looking for a smaller version of the amp, you'd be looking at something like a Deluxe Reverb, which is the same circuit but with a 6V6 instead of a 6L6, and you do lose something for that. It does. And if you wanted it in a smaller box, again, it'll change the tone too. But when it gets to all these high gain amps, to me they all sound the same. Let me just see what that was. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, if anybody's proved it, it's the guy from Josh Scott, right? Because Josh Scott showed you, like, here's a bad monkey. It's a cheap pedal, and he can make it sound like any of those pedals. And no matter what Josh Scott plays, he sounds like Josh Scott playing. Now, he's going to put it up next to a fucking a Klon. They sound the same. You put it up next to a Tube Screamer, they sound the same. Most of the gear does sound the same. Was he really rested? Yeah, he seemed it. He brought his amp with him, which was great because the guy whose gig it was going to have to bring 2 amps. And he left one in his car, and he's like, maybe somebody brought an amp. And I'm like, I doubt it. And then Jerry came in with his own amp. Jerry reboxed a Laney head into a combo. That's a really cool amp. Jerry's great at doing stuff like that. If you have like a head or you have a combo and you want to either you want to swap it into something else. He builds cabinets and whatnot and Tolexes them. So yeah. But anyways, I mean, that's That's the nonsense of YouTube and the music world. And I gotta tell you, it goes the same thing for the cigar smokers. They have these cigar smokers, they do an unboxing of a cigar of the month, which I've been looking at lately because I just joined the King of the Leaf Cigar Club. But they get so fascinated or so much into talking about, oh, this is a Nicaraguan puro, Nicaraguan binder, filler, and wrapper. It's like, it doesn't tell me anything. Just tell me the strength, tell me what kind of leaf it is. Where it's grown doesn't matter. I've smoked great cigars from Honduras. I've smoked terrible cigars from Honduras. I've smoked great cigars from Nicaragua. I've smoked terrible cigars from Nicaragua. I've smoked great cigars from Dominican Republic. I've smoked terrible cigars from the Dominican Republic. I've smoked great Cuban cigars. I've smoked terrible Cuban cigars. They're all over the place. You know, it doesn't matter where it's from or where each component is from. Just tell me the flavor profile they were going for and I'll try it. This has got a Nicaraguan wrapper, a Dominican binder, and Honduras filler. Wonderful. You told me nothing about the cigar. Thanks for including me and telling me nothing, except for the country of origin that these things are grown. Can I smoke a Connecticut wrapper cigar and tell you that it was grown in Connecticut or grown in Ecuador? I would have no fucking clue. They would taste like, but I could tell you it's Connecticut wrapper. And the Connecticut's going to have a similar taste. Now, depending on how long that tobacco is aged will tell me how bitter it is. If a lot of the bitterness is out of it, then I know that that wrapper's been aged, and that's nice. But telling me where it was grown doesn't really say shit to me. You know, but these, you know, it's like, it's the dilettantes of everything. And why does every channel on YouTube where there's a pipe smoker, the guy either looks like he is Santa Claus or Kris Kringle? They got the beard, they're wearing the lumberjack clothes, the mutton shop piper, all that stuff. I mean, they're great guys, but it's like, you talk about a stereotype, it's hysterical. Either that or they're dressed in like fancy, like throwback clothes, like they look like Salvador Dali. I can tell a pipe smoker just by looking at the channel before I even go there. And then they all try to come up with the name. This is the piper. It's like, oh, for fuck's sake. I'm like, can I watch a channel where an alpha male is smoking a pipe? For once. Where the guy just talks straight about this. Because pipe tobacco is one of those things, like, I don't really love it. I enjoy it. But if I have a cigar handy, I'd rather smoke a cigar. I mean, I guess when it gets colder, I'll enjoy like some of the flavored, like the, what do they call them? Instead of calling them flavored tobacco, what does the pipe world call them? Aromatics. Oh yes, you can't just say they're flavored. These are the aromatics. I only smoke aromatics through my Meerschaum pipe. My Missouri Meerschaum pipe is what I smoke. It's like, come on. All right. But, you know, it's like, it's the same world. Whatever the hobby is, the dilettantes exist. Whatever the hobby. You watch a video because a guy says he's going to try, there's a tobacco I wanted to find out about called Autumn Evening by Cornell and Deal. So I watched one guy, and this one guy talks with a southern drawl, and it's almost like, it's as absurd his accent as Hank Hill. While these boys are smoking Cornell and Deal. But anyways, his voice, he's sitting there talking about how, wow, this tastes just like pancakes and maple syrup. And I watch cigar videos where they're like, oh, I get hints of chocolate and spruce. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? When I smoke a cigar, it's like I either like the flavor or I don't like the flavor. But I don't try to do like, I see the head of Jebediah Springfield in the clouds. I'm not cloud searching, you know what I mean? Like, you can come up with any flavor you can think of. I don't taste any of that stuff. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my palate's fucked up. There's a guy out there, his name's Cigar Hound Dog. Every cigar he hates, I love. When he starts off and says that he doesn't like a cigar right off the rip, I'm like, I gotta look this cigar up because I'll love it. It's always the fuller bodied, really nice cigars that I like that he hates. And that's fine. But to the point, I just wish somebody would smoke it and be like, this I like. This is great. This has a good flavor. But the fictitious, whatever you think you're tasting. I tell you right now, you get a cigar smoker in here, and the guy's like, I taste cocoa in this. He'd be like, yeah, maybe I could twist my brain to thinking that's what cocoa tastes like, but that's not what cocoa tastes like to me. If I'm tasting cocoa, I'm breaking out the bag of marshmallows. But anyways, I just find that it's so funny, no matter what your interests are, you get like the deepest dives into the stuff that is like ad nauseum to me anyways. And everybody's just has to do the same video. I see that now other people are making videos talking about Rick Beato's reaction to the 250 greatest guitar players. I've been making fun of Rolling Stone's list and saying those guys are douchebags and hipster dilettantes for the longest time. For the longest time. The fact that this guitar player list is waking everybody up to the fact that Rolling Stone has their head up their ass is so absurd to me. Because when Rolling Stone put Bob Dylan as the greatest songwriter of all time, every alarm in my head goes off. And I'm like, I don't even think you could take 2 years out of Stevie Wonder, and Stevie wrote better songs than Dylan's whole catalog. How is he better than Stevie? And Lennon and McCartney. Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff. There are guys out there that wrote some great, great songs. Really clever songs. I mean, I didn't even want to go to American Songbook stuff, but you got like Julie Stein and Sammy Cahn. Those guys, I would say every song they wrote is better than Dylan's songs. But Dylan is the greatest songwriter. But it takes 250 guitar player lists that omits everybody that should be there, like every other one of their lists. And now people are like, and because Rick Beato said it, I'm like, yeah, Rick, I've been ripping on that list for a long time. There are guitar players on that list that have no business being in that list. And I'm not saying they're bad guitar players. And there's nothing wrong with a lot of guitar players. But if you're talking about 250, the greatest of all time, you better have 250 of the greatest people that picked up that instrument. Now, you also really need to go into what your criteria is, because, like for me, is Chuck Berry one of the greatest musicians of our time? I don't think so. But I do feel he was an important player, but not that original. Like I hear a lot of Pee Wee Crayton when I hear him play. I hear a lot of the earlier guys before him. But he made it mainstream, and that says something as far as for what he did to American music as a player. But does that make him a great player? I don't think so. It doesn't make him a great player. And I don't think he would be a great player on any standard. I think if you got, in fact, I think if you took since 1970, and you took the top 100 studio session players, Louis Shelton, Larry Carlton, Dean Parks, all those guys, Steve Lukather, Mike Landau, all those guys, you're not going to have Chuck Berry even be able to hang with those guys in for whatever. Yes, what they did was super important. Yes, they molded a country and music and a generation, but that doesn't make them a great player. Like, that's just where they were at the time. You know, I think most musicians don't even understand like who the classical prodigies were of the last like 200 to 300 years, and what they contributed. Because I mean, people like, you know, all these guitar players are all like, I like Paganini. Well, they all like Paganini because number one, Steve Vai bastardized the Fifth Caprice for the movie Crossroads, and everybody was introduced to what I would say is a pop bastardization of the Fifth Caprice, but nothing like the Fifth Caprice. I mean, not even close. Yes, the melody line for a second is the same, but Steve made it, And I'm not trying to take away from Steve. What I think he did was awesome for the movie. It was great. But it's not the Fifth Caprice. If you want to see the Fifth Caprice, there's a guitar player, Anton O'Parin, who performs it on the guitar, and it's way more difficult, way more out there. But Paganini was a guy who basically wrote impossible violin parts. He was a violin virtuoso, and if you want my opinion of Paganini, I think his compositions are garbage. I don't think they're very good. They're not something when you listen to them, you're like, this is great music. It's almost like Yngwie, when you listen to Yngwie when he went solo. Because I think if Paganini had to go sit there and perform Mozart's material, he would perform it fucking unbelievably. But the thing is, when he's performing his own stuff, it's like, yeah, this is wanker shit for the wankers. People like Liszt's or anything like that. I'm just saying, there's so many, like, those guys were great players. But when we look at the players in the modern rock world, or the rock age, and we sit there and we say, Chuck Berry's a great player. Was Chuck Berry a better player than Carlos Rios? Not on any planet that I would live on. Carlos Rios was a fucking monster. And all he had to do was play the guitar on the album Brother to Brother, and cemented a place in history for me as being one of the most fantastic guitar players. Could Chuck Berry do any of that? No. So the question is then, what is the criteria for the greatest guitar player of all time? Because clearly we're not just talking about talent, because there are guys in the list that don't have it. They have ability, and they have a moderate ability, and they did amazing stuff within their ability, within their capability. But are we going to sit there and then say, that some violinist who wrote some pieces that maybe were beautiful pieces? I think, did Mozart play violin? I know he played piano, but let's say Mozart played piano. Was Mozart considered a better piano player than Liszt? I think his music is better than Liszt. But I think Liszt, his stuff is beautiful and complicated, but I don't think it's on the same level as what Mozart did or Beethoven. But I don't know if I would sit there and then say, well, that makes Beethoven a better player. I wouldn't think so. Liszt was insane. Literally. It's great. But we look at the players of today, and it's like, what's the criteria? If the criteria is he was the first to do it, well, who cares? Who gives a shit? Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Let's just say you were starting a band. You're putting together the greatest rock and roll band of all time, and someone says, here's some of the greatest rock and roll players of all time, and they tell you Chuck Berry, and you bring him in, and the guy can't play some of the basic stuff that today's rock players are in. And he's like, well, people think I'm great because I conveyed the spirit. What? Why are you on this list? Well, during the 50s, when people were just playing through a power tube or preamp tube, whatever. I don't know. At that point, I'm going to ask Beetlejuice what his opinion is. He's going to go, me? Hanging around. Like, you could talk about Van Halen. Now, Van Halen is in my top 3 players of all time, personally, for me. That has to do with him being a favorite of mine, and I also think he influenced a generation of players. But do I think there are players technically a lot better than him? Where if I had to make a real list, yeah, there's no way that Holdsworth isn't a better player. Yeah, Eric Johnson. Eric Johnson is a fucking monster on the guitar. A monster. The point I'm saying is I think they need to expound their criteria of what are they looking at. Because when you say that someone's the greatest, to me, there has to be, if the playing isn't great, but they really did influence, let's talk about, again, I'm going to bring up Chuck Berry, because I'm not a huge fan And I love his songs, and it's like they were good, and I respect what he did, but let's take a look at it. Is he a great player? No. Put him down the list. But he did so much more. Okay, well, maybe that knocks him up between 1 and 5 names on the list because of what he did. Maybe that influences a little bit of a swing, of a 5-name swing. He's still not in my top 100. I still don't think there's 100 players that lose out to him because of what he did. I mean, there are players like Mark Ribot, fucking great. I don't even know if he's on the list, but he should be. Bill Frisell, another one. A lot of the jazz guitar players, I mean, you're going to talk about, so if you're going to say rock guitar players, I mean, does fusion count as rock? Are we going to sit there and say somehow that Chuck Berry and Steve Howe should be in the same conversation? I mean, I'd say to anybody, go learn Johnny B. Good, and then go learn fucking Starship Trooper, and good luck. Good luck with that. And both are great songs. I happen to like Starship Trooper better, and I'm not a big prog fan, but I like Starship Trooper better. But just the parts in that song, what he's playing. They've done songwriters because we've broken down the list before, and it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. How do you have a song? How do you have the greatest songwriters of all time and not have Barry Gibb in the top 20? I'm sorry. Barry Gibb was fucking awesome. Those songs are brilliantly written, and they're beautiful songs. And they're better than anything Dylan ever touched. In the times, God, and there was a lot of shitbags in the 70s that were trying to do Dylan. If you watch that show, The Midnight Special, they always throw in like one of these acoustic guys that never had any legs, and you never knew them past 1973 or 74. You know, nobody talks about Gamble and Huff. Nobody, Oh yeah, they've done it. We've done it on the show. We've done it on the show, where I ripped them a new ass. And like I said, Stevie Wonder should have been high on the list. And as much as I put Gamble and Huff together as a songwriting team, I would not put Lennon McCartney in there as a songwriting team because I think they both stand alone on their own. Lionel Richie, I agree with that. I 100% agree with that. 100%. And you could also throw in there Maurice White from Earth, Wind and Fire as a better writer. I don't think Bob Dylan has a song that's as good as That's the Way of the World by Earth, Wind and Fire. Let alone Jupiter or fucking any of those songs on All in All. Sadly, I think Steven Tyler was a great writer back in the day. Not so much in the 80s, but in the 70s, he had a great span of stuff. And some of the songs he wrote on piano, I think, are really nice. When people talk about Dylan, I don't think Dylan can touch Tom Waits. I know when Tom Waits came out, they were like, he's the new Dylan, he's better. And so was Springsteen. Both those guys, to me, are like, they can sit there and say they're the new Dylan. Well, mainly because they're like that voice of that generation, but they're far superior. I don't think Dylan wrote a song in his career that has the emotion of Kentucky Ave on Blue Valentines from Tom Waits. Swordfish Trombones, the whole record. Rain Dogs. A Foreign Affair. Even Heart Attack and Vine is a fucking phenomenal album. And with Bruce, you could take Bruce's first album, Greetings. Greetings, is that the second one? The first and second, and Born to Run, and Darkness on the Edge of Town, and The River. And what's the one he recorded in his bedroom? Nebraska. After that, forget it. After that, you can pick ones and twosies songs here and there. They're good, but I like both those guys. I'm a huge Billy Joel fan. You want to, I mean, talk about songwriting from Billy Joel's album Turnstiles, The Stranger, and then 52nd Street. There's a 1, 2, 3 punch of brilliant albums that are just hard to ignore. They're brilliant. Now, the one before Turnstiles, I believe, is Piano Man. And it's okay. Captain Jack is cool, I think. So You're My Home on that album. Ain't No Crime. What else is on that record? It's okay. It's a good album. It's not a great album. And then Glass Houses after 52nd Street, again, is a good album, not a great album. But those three albums are fantastic. Turnstiles, The Stranger, and 52nd Street. He was awesome. Has Dylan in his life wrote a song as fucking beautiful as Just the Way You Are? No. How about Vienna? No. Scenes from an Italian Restaurant? No. Summer Highland Falls? No. It's called Halal. Halal is like kosher. It's like Arab kosher. It's the same thing as kosher. I don't know if it's Jewish. Halal is I thought it's Arab. No. No. I mean, Paul Buchanan as a songwriter compared to Dylan Buchanan's a fucking genius. Hats is one of the I'll argue, Hugh, that Hats is the greatest album of all time. I have a hard time not accepting that. I didn't see what you wrote. I'm sorry. I got smoke in my eyes here. Hold on. I missed what your joke was. Oh, the whole thing was a joke. Oh, I get it. Hello, is it me you're looking for? Is it something? Oh, thanks, Laz. Yeah, I'm just saying, it's like there's so much music out there, and people like, they get stuck listening to the same stuff. And as a kid, when I was hungry, I always wanted to find as much music as I could find. I was a metal guitar player, and when I heard Johnny Marr for the first time, I'm like, what the fuck is he doing? Like, I suggest to anybody, if you think yourself as like a hard rock guitar player and you think you're pretty good, go learn This Charming Man from the Smiths. You get a lesson real quick from Johnny Marr on how to write a pop song and how to play one that's not easy to play. It's really super clever. His whole approach to the guitar is clever, and the approach to those, Morrissey solo, I find a little nauseating. In fact, after he did his singles album, not Viva Hey, but what was the singles album called? Hugh, you would know. I could see it's got the blue background. There was Viva Hey, and then there was all the singles, and then they put out the singles album, and then Kill Uncle came out after that, and Kill Uncle from on there sucks. But Morrissey with the Smiths were fucking awesome. Him and Johnny Marr together were fantastic. And it's the whole band. They were great. I don't know why. I cannot think. Can somebody tell me what time it is, by the way? I don't know why I can't think of the name of that Morrissey album. What the fuck is the name of it? Bona Drag. That's it. Oh, it's only 4:15. Nah, 4:15 where? It's got to be 5:15 here then. It's getting dark. Bona Drag was the Morrissey album, the last Morrissey album that I found that I could listen to. The size of this fucking leaf. Getting rained on here with leaves. Mississippi. Yeah, I think it's 5:15 here. It's got to be an hour later. Ah. You liked Vauxhall and I. That was the one that came out after um, after Kill Uncle. Now Vauxhall's a brand of car, right? Is it General Motors out in England? Is what Vauxhall is, Hugh? Because they don't have that brand in the States. I think it's a GM car, Vauxhall. Correct me if I'm wrong, Hugh. I remember when I was in England and I saw the dealership. Yeah, it's a General Motors car, Vauxhall. Yeah. I guarantee if somebody's not a Morrissey fan in this chat, you've never heard the car brand Vauxhall. And am I pronouncing it right? I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, Hugh, tell me what the phonetics is in the chat. Oh, it's spot on. Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah, it's a, yeah, because they don't have, like, you don't see Ford or anything out there like that, or Chevy. I think the cars in England are generally smaller. The roads certainly are. Working night and day, I try to get ahead. But oh, what a great song. Over the hillside. What a great guitar tone in that record, too. Baby, baby, let's go out tonight. Oh, Curtis Mayfield was awesome. Forget about the Curtis Mayfield experience, even the impressions. Hey, what's going on, Sean? Yeah, I mean, the impressions. People Get Ready, all that stuff was fucking great. I think a lot of the Bob Marley stuff was great. I think Van Morrison was great. You want to listen to a great Van Morrison album? Poetic Champions Composed from 1986. Beautiful. I've been searching my whole life. Oh, it's all good, Lass. It's all good. Yeah, Van Morrison wrote some great songs. I had a woman last week come up to me and she's like, "Can you play Into the Mystic?" I said, "I can, but I won't." She's like, "Why not?" I said, "Every fucking asshole with an acoustic guitar does that song." I said, "I'll do Someone Like You. I'll do a song that nobody does, but I'm not going to do that shitbag song, and I'm not doing fucking Brown Eyed Girl." I'm not, I'm like, it'll cost you too much in the tip jar for you to pay me to do it. Oh, the doors were great. The doors were brilliant. The Doors is a band that you get sick of, or can get sick of, with the songs they play on the radio. And then when you walk away from them and go back to them, you're like, nah, it's still fucking brilliant. It really is genius stuff. Super clever. Um, we did uh, we did Riders on the Storm the other night when I played bass. Boo doo boo, because Jack was noodling on this Fender Rhodes sound, and I'm like, oh, do it in E minor. And then I started playing the line, and he was like, he went right into it, and we were like, ah, it's fucking great. Girl, you gotta love your man. Oh, I even think An American Prayer, where they took Jim's poetry and made music. I mean, you can't just say also Jim Morrison, because I think Ray Manzarek had a lot to do with the songs in that band, and I also think that Robbie Krieger wrote some great songs. We've done Who's Behind the Door. Me and Jimmy have done it acoustically, and I used to do it in the full band. That's a fun one. We could do it again. Um, the problem is then I have to think ahead of time and take the guitar that I have tuned in E and retune it to open G, because that's open G with two Gs on the bottom. Very much like how Keith Richards doesn't like the low D in open G. Randy Jackson from Zebra used to tune the low D up to a G, so he would have a G G D G B G B D. Robbie? Yeah, Robbie Krieger, yeah. I also think Robbie Robertson from the band, his solo album from 1987, the one produced by Daniel Lanois, um, Broken Arrow and Fallen Angel, Showdown at Big Sky, Somewhere Down the Crazy River, Testimony. That album's phenomenal. But when will you have Krell come sit in for Beth? What is Krell going to do? Hold on. Folks, hit those thumbs up. I wasn't planning on it. It gets in the way, like instead of people dancing, a lot of people are just standing behind my phone, watching it on the phone. It's like so weird. Not too bad. I wouldn't say it was too bad. You know, there are things you pay a lot for in LA. Gas will cost you a lot of money. But you're not really heating your apartment. You're not really cooling it when you live by the beach. So that was really nothing. And, you know, sometimes food can be more expensive when you go out to restaurants. But for the most part, I got an hour left here. Then I got to get out of here for my gig. So when I'm finished with this cigar, I'm going to be heading inside. Oh yeah. I mean, I'm in shorts 90% of the time in LA. And, you wear jeans at night sometimes. It gets cooler at night, there's no question about that. Anytime. Did you guys find those shirts? I think it's called Veritim. Vetramin? Vetramin? Did you guys find those shirts? They're on Amazon. Yeah, well, he's a great writer. He should be in there for great. I mean, you're talking about Bob Dylan as a writer. Russ Ballard. He wrote Since You've Been Gone. He wrote I Surrender. He wrote God Gave Rock and Roll to You. He wrote There's Something Going On for Frida Lindstad. He wrote Free Me for Roger Daltrey. He wrote Back in the New York Groove. He wrote the Santana song, I'm winning. I'm winning. And he had that solo song he did in the 80s called Voices. He wrote You Can Do Magic by America. Great writer. Nope, Rolling Stone says Dylan's better. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Another great group of guys, Hugh. Hall and Dozier. All right, guys, that's going to be it for me. I'm done. I got to put the cigar down because there's nothing left to smoke. And I got my gig tonight. I want to thank everyone for hanging out with me today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Roboto. And, yeah, I'm not going to be doing any more outside cigar talks. And maybe, I don't know if I'm going to do any indoors. I have to move some stuff around. Yeah, he's no good. All right, guys, very good. Thank you so much for hanging out. Peace. I'm out of here.